Alright folks, I have a Abus 7240. It is a tiny little lock. I assume this is like, they come in multiple colors, so I'm assuming it's a lockout tagout thing. Um, and probably like good for like school lockers. It is very difficult to pick in this particular style. The The keyway, as you can see, is not the one that says Abus. This is like some kind of weird Yale type thing. And let me see if I can't get my camera to focus. There we go. The pins come down pretty far into it, and as a result, I can get my pick here. The angle that you have to attack these is very difficult to get around this corner. Normally you would try and pick from the shelf right here, but there's a couple of key pins, and if you look at the key, you can see that there are a couple of pins that are really low cut close to that left edge, which means they don't have to be moved very much. If you try and stick your pick down there, you're probably going to end up oversetting one of the pins in it. So you gotta kinda be ginger with it. So we're just gonna get this viced up here. Try and get a good view on the camera. I don't know how easy this will make it for me to pick, but now a lot of people will put a mark on here, but one thing I noticed about, so they can detect like false sets and stuff like that, I didn't really bother with that. There was already a scratch on the lock from here across that I can kind of use as a placeholder. There's another one over here from when I was trying to rake it and I pulled out too far and almost stabbed myself in the thumb or something. It happens. Now, the top of the keyway on this thing, on mine it's been a little chewed out because I've been messing with this lock for a couple weeks now. It is very difficult to find a tensioner that will fit in there securely enough to be pressed. Like, this is the smaller of the two pry bars from Peterson I have, and they don't fit right. This one might work. This is the other type of pry bar they have that's like has all the knot. Now, see, that's too thick. So usually what I end up using on this particular lock is actually the thicker of my bottom of the keyway tension tools from Peterson. These are the ones that have, the serrated edges on the bottom. And I just go in and carry it up to there. Now, this has spool pins in it. So one of the things you realize with the spool pins is that you get a lot of feedback. Well, using a tension rod like this, I don't have very much control over the core. But what I do have is I have the flex in this, and I can gradually let up off on the tension that I'm applying to the lock, and what will happen is that it will get it to pop out. So let's go ahead and start attacking. Now, all of these locks that I've heard of have a gatekeeper pin. That's a standard pin right in the middle, and everything else is spooled. So I'm going to pop this in, and I'm kind of going in at a very steep angle and going like this. I'm kind of doing this kind of motion to try and curve up around that to hit the tips of the pins. And I'm just looking for anything, finding the tips of the pins and seeing if anybody's binding under light tension. Okay, I get a little bit of grindiness out of 6, but it's not doing anything. And since I may have overset something, I'm just going to go straight into more tension. You can see there's quite a bit of flex on this pry bar, and you'll see my thumb slide up and down as I adjust how much force I'm trying to give. More force, less force, sort of thing. And that's resistance to any feedback that might try and counter-rotate the core. Right now I'm just looking for binders. There's 5, 6, a little click. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get this gatekeeper pin to lock up, because up until the point where you get rid of the gatekeeper, the only way a spool pin will bind your core and keep the core from rotating is if the bottom part of the spool is already above the shear line, which means that spool may as well be a standard pin. It's not actually doing its job as a spool pin at that point. And there we go, and as you can see, I get quite a bit of counter rotation on that, or false set, sorry, yeah. So now I'm going to go back, and basically I'm keeping the heavy tension on because I don't want anything to move right now. I'm just looking for any pin that's actually still loose but springy. And I'm not really finding anything. And there's a little bit of movement in the pin that has no springiness to it, so I can tell that one's, that one's already up there quite a bit. But at least it's not overset. Now the neat thing is that when you do get the false set going, you probably don't have anything overset, because the only way a key pin could be overset is if there wasn't very much of a false set going. Once you get past a certain point, you can kind of tell that you're not overset on anything. So there's that. Okay, so now I move my thumb out to the end, which means this has much more flex to it now. And I'll just vary my tension a little bit, and I'll have my tip of my pick on a pin. And as I vary the rotation, just kind of lever a little bit and see if anything moves. You'll feel it try and move the core with you. Yeah, see, that one's trying to move, that one's trying to rotate the core, so I'm just going to let off on the tension slightly and wiggle it and see if the core wants to cooperate and move with me. If it doesn't, just move on to the next one. Reapply your tension, you'll feel yourself back in the false set, go to a different pin. Whichever one gives you the most is the one you want to be messing with. Still nothing there. There's only 5 pins, so one of them is set because that gave you your false set. So now there's only 4 spools, and there's another one. And you can see that little line right here, maybe. I don't know if that's showing up on camera, but now we're just looking for something else that when I touch it, I kind of feel the touch, almost as if I was pressing my pick up against the back of this. That's kind of what you're trying to feel, and what should hopefully be transmitted. Okay, there we go. There's some counter rotation. So now I'm going to move further out towards the end, and I'm going to let back slightly. I'm keeping it bent. I want my pick down here to do the work for me, and it's not going to go. I don't want to go too far because then I'll cause other pins to fall down. There's always some other pin I can move. Usually. Every now and then you got to take a chance, but, we all have to take chances sometimes, I guess. Nothing on that one. He feels kind of like he's set, actually. There we go. That's a lot of counter rotation that I can feel. So we're just going to try and compressively wiggle it up in. Did I lose my false set? Or did I press on the warding? Now, you can check your false set to see if you're, by seeing if your first pin is still set. Mine's still set, so I'm just going to keep going. I haven't lost the first pin. Ouch. Sometimes your pick will get stuck on the side of a pin because of the keyway. Oh, that's a lot of counter rotation. Okay, now I've set that one. Let's go to the next one. At some point, you're going to fall back into the false set very deeply. And that's usually when you only got one left to mess with. Or sometimes you get lucky and you just pop the lock. have a hard time with picking and talking at the same time, so I'm just going to shut up now. If I have to reset this, back into the false set. Come back here, let's find pin 6. Make sure he's good. Nothing on him. Decent, oh yeah. Whatever he is, he's gonna pop soon. Now sometimes you'll need to lift up onto the edge just to get a little bit more leverage, but just be conscious of your other pins and don't do it when you're not in a false set. There's another one, we're a little deeper. And make sure you get in there and pry on that false set a little bit. Any spools that are caught in the thing, it'll kind of work them up to be about the same level. And that'll give you a better indication of which one's the next one you should be monkeying with. And there we go, the lock is open. With pin number 3 was the holdout there. Which one was that? Yeah, that was this really deep one here that I kept skipping over because I didn't want to accidentally hit it. So, once the shackle's undone, the spring tension is removed, you can just pull it out. But, yeah. So, let's go ahead and take this thing apart. Make sure we're nice and focused here. Yeah. Okay. So let's lock it back up. I'll show the key works. Still very smooth lock. I like Abus's locks compared to almost every other manufacturer out there that I have had the pleasure of picking. Just because they come apart easy. They're generally easy to service. This one just has a straight Phillips head screw inside the lock body. This particular one did not have a bypass ring in it, and I don't know if that's an anti-bypass ring, and I don't know if that's normal, but it does mean that I could probably just jam my pick down in there and bypass the hell out of this thing. As a matter of fact, I think I saw a video from Lockpicking Lawyer where he did just that. Let's grab my C-clip remover. So we got that there. Actually, I'm going to use this. You know, Sparrows, I like their mat. I really do. I wish it was reversed, though. I wish the logo part was up here and the pin parts were down here. I think that would have made a little more sense with it, as well as not having the recessed pockets in the middle. Like, I like how these are. I like how all this stuff is, but I'll do a different video reviewing some of this stuff at some point. So that's locked. So where do I want to do this? Because I don't want pins to drop down in here when I use my follower. So let's just turn it like that. And this way that puts the key pins in this line, the driver pins in kind of that line, and nobody should have any problems there. Perfecto. Alright, so pretty standard here. Whoop, I just lost pin number 4. Let's pull this out. And there's 1, 2, 3. We already got 4, 5, and 6. Alright, so let's sort these out here a little bit. They're all standard key pins, nothing fancy. You know, it's not meant to be ultra high security from that perspective. Good opportunity for a challenge lock would be to serrate these, though. That way, just because of the way the keyway is in this thing, how difficult it is to pick in there, it's really easy to accidentally overset something up until you get that really good false set, and even then after the fact, when you're trying to jam them up in there. So you know, threading the bottom in here and putting serrated key pins in it would probably go a long way. I am going to show you something else about this lock and what I meant by spools that are effectively, why did you bother putting them in, here in a minute. But for now, excuse me, let's go to pin number 1. Whoops. Standard steel spring. These things are jumpy. They're jumping springs. And yeah, as I thought, a key pin. That is perfectly standard, perfectly normal. Now, this is where we get the fun pins. The rest of these are all spools. Okay. And they're all symmetrical spools. There's no up or down on them. That's why I'm not really caring much. And they're all identical. So it doesn't really matter at this point which one goes into which chamber. You could probably mess with it some to get, you know, a different shear line. Or a different, you know, binding order. But just don't think about it and let it add variation to the next time you pick it. Oh, and there goes a spring. I will have to find that later. Okay, so -1 spring. Here we are, close up. Pretty standard. I imagine the Abus keyway would have been really difficult to pick. Or I mean easier to pick than this one. I do think that that makes this lock a lot harder because it is like that, but not impossible, of course. Now what I wanted to show you was just so I get the pins in the right spots here because I don't have to do it twice. So we're going to do a partial reassembly here. I'm not going to reassemble the Bible, but I'm going to put the pins in right, Jamie. I'm going to put these in and then take the key out so I can show you what I mean by an ineffectual spool. A spool that at no point will it ever actually behave like a spool when picking it. Okay, so taking the keys out, you see how far down all the pins fall. You know, the key pin comes up in here, and that one's got a decent amount to travel before it'll reach the shear line. But let's take a look at chamber number 3 first of all, and then we'll take a look at 6. Now these were the deepest cuts on the key, but as you can see, hopefully as you can see, the spool, okay, hang on. Let's set the focus to auto for right now, even though it really likes the downward side. Okay. See how the spool sits on top of the key pin right here? And the shear line for the spool, like where it dips into the inner part inside, is already above the shear line. At this point, and there's no other serration on this pin at all or anything, it's just a straight spool, will never be engaged. You know, and there's nothing else to catch it there. It might as well have been a regular driver pin. Same with this one. Might as well have been you know, I can get the focus to cooperate. Same with pin number 6. Come on. What camera takes 5% of the exterior as its focal point and ignores everything in front of it? Okay, I hate focus. And this is a Logitech C922. This should be golden here. Maybe I can bring it up into focus. Okay. There. and there, same thing. They're both sitting above the shear line. So ineffectual spools, that was just something I wanted to point out, and usually you can figure those out pretty quick. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you learned something from it. I'm kind of doing these and talking more about the locks as I learn about them and trying to pass that on to other pickers. So enjoy, have a good day, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Toodles.